Hello and welcome to Euranet Plus Press Club debate. This week, ministers of foreign affairs of the European Union have decided to impose additional sanctions on some of the Russian officials for the imprisonment of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Most likely, sanctions will be applied on 4 Russian officials, such as the prosecutor general, although the names were still unclear when the decision was made. Meanwhile, the new US administration is preparing their own sanction list and is thinking about coordinating that with the European Union. But is this enough to make a pressure on Kremlin? And what is the potential of the future relationships between the European Union and Russia after this so-called new law? This is a topic of our conversation today, and with me I have 3 great journalists. Claudia Knopke from IMS and Bielefeld, Germany. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Then we have coming from Prague, Richard Jozwiak from Radio Free Europe. Hello.
Hello, Artyom.
And here in Brussels, we have a journalist from Agence Europe, and that's Camille Ceris-Gesson. Hello.
Hello.
So, and my name, of course, is Artyom Skontos, not to be forgotten. Richard, let me start with you, since you've been covering Eastern European and EU relationships for a while. Is this enough to sanction just a few, basically 4, maybe 3 or 5 individuals to actually make a statement to Moscow, or should you be doing more than that?
The EU should definitely be doing more. I mean, 4 is not is nothing, essentially. And if I was the Kremlin, I would cry of laughter at this weak response after so many things that have happened to Navalny. On the other hand, though, it's what I always say when it comes to EU sanctions. All 27 needs to agree. You need to have clear evidence that the people you sanction are in fact somewhat linked to what you're sanctioning. So the process is slow, and this is usually you get down to the bare minimum and you agree on that, because that's the fastest way of doing things. If you wanted to be more ambitious, you could have been, but it would have taken longer. And likelihood is that if you went after, for example, oligarchs, which is something that Navalny's people wanted the EU to do, is that these oligarchs are rich, and they would basically take these sanctions to court, to the European court, and being able to pay very good European lawyers, by the way, to make sure that they pick holes in the EU arguments and make sure that they're not sanctioned anymore. So even though I bemoan the lack of ambition from the EU, I also have some sympathy with all the problems they have actually getting them there in the first place.
Claudia, Germany keeps on advocating for this dialogue with Russia, that the response to human rights needs to be separated from the economic projects, and economic projects have been going on for a long time. That's a clear position of Chancellor Angela Merkel. And of course, the biggest issue for Germany in terms of economic projects is Nord Stream 2. What has been the public reaction so far in Germany for this latest round of sanction? And is it getting perhaps harder for the Merkel's government to defend publicly the continuation of Nord Stream 2?
It's a little bit of poking the Russian bear whenever it's possible, to poke him carefully, not too tough. And let's caress the Russian bear whenever it's needed. And that's the way Germany is dealing with Russia, and the whole EU is dealing with Russia. As you said, here, the main direction is let's keep all the diplomatic channels open. And Nord Stream, to suspend it, like the European Parliament, for example, is calling for, the answer here is, well, should we really stop our economic relation to Russia and push Russia, therefore, more to China, and then building a huge Russian-Chinese bloc somewhere deep down in the east there? So would that be a better solution, a good solution? There are some voices in the German Bundestag and also public voices calling for much tougher reactions and show the Russian bear that we are strong too, don't be afraid of the Russian bear. But in fact, it is always, as I said in the beginning, poking a little bit, caressing a little bit, and to suspend Nord Stream would not do any good. Though people asking here for, let's show Putin, or let's speak to Putin in a language he is understanding, and that's money. So in the end, it's tricky, like it is in the EU. It is, of course, here in Germany.
Money and power, indeed, that's what also the allies of Navalny who've been here in Brussels have been talking about on Monday. They're saying that those are the only things, indeed, that Putin understands, and that's why they're calling EU leaders hypocritical, because they keep on talking about human rights, and then when it comes to the money and oil and gas, they come and keep on talking to Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, even as if nothing had happened, so to say. But before touching upon that subject, I want to ask about something else. Camille, some say that this sanction turn is actually interesting because it's the first time that EU has applied sanctions upon this human rights mechanism, which is also called by some as the EU Magnitsky Act. And now, you know, we already hear, okay, if we've done that as an EU with Russia, then perhaps we should also sanction people from China, we should sanction people from Myanmar for the human rights abuses. Do you see that as potential beginning of the new approach in the EU, where the sanctions go kind of wider and it's a bit easier to apply them in the future?
I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest, because only for agreeing on this list, they needed more than 1 year. I mean, I remember it was 1 year and a half ago. The Dutch minister was saying that we need this kind of list. We need to have an easy list to sanction people linked to violation of human rights. And then discussion made 1 year, more than 1 year, to have a list at the end. So, I mean, for us, it was something like easy to have this kind of list. And it's not like really complicated to do this kind of things. It's not like critical. I mean, everybody agreed that we need to have a list to sanction people who violate human rights, and then we need time. So now I think it will be complicated to have a right balance. So do we have one country who say, okay, we need some sanctions against China, another one saying, okay, we need sanctions against, I don't know, Saudi Arabia because of Yemen? I mean, it could be like a really large list, or it could be like tricky to find names and to agree on countries and on people on the list. So it could be a good idea, but the EU is already taking a lot of sanctions against people. I mean, we're always saying, okay, the EU has sanctions against a lot of people, against a lot of countries, but nothing is moving. So I think we have to find a right balance, and not to take too easy sanctions just to say, okay, we are taking sanctions and then nothing is changing.
Indeed, it's what we've also talked in the very beginning, that whether that will make any impact. And what's your assessment on that, Camille? Whether this 4 or so people that might be sanctioned, prosecutor general, the head of the prison service, will that do anything?
I don't know. I don't know if they have money in the EU. I don't know if they are traveling quite often to the EU, because at the end, the sanctions will be that. It will be like, no, they will not have the right to come into the EU, to have a visa to come. They will, if they have money in the EU, the money will be frozen. So, I mean, we have sanctioning a lot of people in the world, and I think many of them don't have money in Europe and don't want to travel in Europe. So it's not like the US sanctions, when you have a second effect to the sanctions and nobody is moving anymore, because you can have sanctions by the US if you are trading, for example, with people. So I'm not sure at all it will have any effects. At least they will know they have sanctions, but it could be also used, I think, by Russia to say, okay, look, the EU is interfering in our affairs, and they are taking decisions on our own country. So it could be also used, I think, by Russia.
Definitely, this type of decisions are always used by the propaganda machine. That's quite clear. Richard, I wanted to ask you now, so coming back to this supposing hypocrisy or alleged hypocrisy of the European leaders. This is what the supporters of Alexei Navalny are saying. And so, yes, you mentioned already yourself that there is a need to, according to them, to sanction oligarchs, but that's difficult. And then the other thing they're saying that we need to perhaps go for the medium level, the judges that are taking decisions against protesters, people who are breaking the law, you know, and basically imprisoning peaceful protesters with no reason. And is that a potential solution? Do you think that EU would go for something like that? And on a more general note, do you agree with this assessment that it's actually, you know, money and oil and gas and human rights are just a bit of a, you know, pretext for the EU leaders when they're dealing with Russia?
I think in general, when I look at EU sanctions policy, it's a box ticking exercise. That's what it is, essentially. The EU is a rather peaceful organization, I would say. It's very good dealing with third countries when these third countries are constructive. When they want to have a trade deal, they want to have visa liberalization, they might even want to join the European Union, then the EU can offer a whole palette of goodies of things. When it comes to actually the stick, not the carrots, the EU just have one stick essentially, and that's sanctions. And usually this sanction is a rather blunt thing. And as I said before, you need all 27 to agree with it, and you don't want to hurt your own business. So in the end, it becomes something that EU can say, well, look, at least we did something. We put some names on there and that's it. Just like Camille Seri said before, I actually don't think that many of those people, I've actually never got an answer to this from the EU, even though I've asked many times. Well, how many of all those people were sanctioned? Over 170 when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, the 88 we have in Belarus, or even the few we have over Turkey for what they are doing in the Eastern Mediterranean, or Venezuela. How many of these people actually do have bank accounts in the EU? Do you know? I've never got an answer to that. And then again, when it comes to the travel ban is essentially policed by individual EU member states. So it's the internal ministry in Latvia or France or Germany that have to look to this. And there's been plenty of reports that this net is quite wide. You know, basically lots of people can slip in and out without anyone knowing, in fact, that they've been somewhere. So this whole thing is a Potemkin village to a certain extent. Unless you really go after hard economic sanctions, this is a box-ticking exercise.
Okay, that's quite a critical approach to this. And one of the things that we hear, that one of the sort of steps that helped to at least take these sanctions was the recent trip of EU High Representative Josep Borrell to Moscow. Some say that the warm welcome, you know, ironically speaking, that he had received there had actually helped to unify European position and move faster on this. Do you agree with this assessment, Rickard?
I mean, in a sense, it was such a car crash that even those who wanted some sort of bigger, wider dialogue realized that maybe now it's not the time. So I think, in a sense, the 3-4 countries that were very much against this move, I'm thinking especially about the Baltic 3 and Poland, who really said, no, don't go there. In the end, they sort of won the argument by the pure disaster that the press conference was. I obviously don't know what went down behind the scenes, but the press conference was such a train crash in slow motion that I think for now, the Baltic 3 and Poland were vindicated in that sense. But I think eventually we will have to talk to Russia. Nothing much will change. We have been in a sort of quite bad situation since the Crimea annexation, but we need Russia. This is clear. Over Iran, perhaps even over Belarus very soon. There needs to be talks. So the relationship is not the best. It's going to get a bit worse now, I think. But overall, the channels will and are open.
Claudia, what was the take on the trip of Borrell to Moscow? At the end, you know, here in Brussels, at least what I hear is that it was Berlin that was very much advocating for him to go and to perhaps smooth some of the tensions so that the construction of Nord Stream 2 could continue without too much of a public quarrel. It seems like he had achieved the opposite, rather.
He did, but I don't know whether it was politeness or common embarrassment or they were furious. I can't tell. I can only say that everybody was like appreciating that he did the trip and he was fighting and he was showing the European face. So it was the foreign minister who said in the Bundestag, we are thankful to Mr. Borrell that he did that trip. So there was no additional kicking asses, I would say, at least not in public. Of course, everybody saw the reaction and heard about the reaction, but it was not pouring oil into the fire here in Germany when it comes to that. To blame him for not being prepared, strong enough, not strong enough, or other thing. So it was mostly appreciation for going there.
Yes, and what I hear is there is also some of the Western diplomats don't, or at least publicly, say that they don't quite understand what the whole fuss is about. It was an ordinary trip, they say. So that's perhaps is also a position that you can hear. Camille, what's your take on this recent trip? Was it really such a disaster that people in Eastern Europe try to portray, or perhaps let's say in the French-speaking world that you know better, it's being portrayed again as like an attempt to have a dialogue?
I don't know. I think first I'm surprised why people thought it was a so bad trip. I mean, we knew about that. It was always like that before. When I remember when Lavrov was meeting Mogherini, it was already tough. I mean, during the press conference, it was not like like a honeymoon. So I think we were used to that, and we were prepared to that. I think Borrell was prepared to that. But to be honest, the press conference was a nightmare for him, I think. And last week, some sources said like we were prepared to have a difficult trip. But what we don't really understand is why Borrell during the press conference stayed like that. He could reply to Lavrov, and he said like, "Okay, I will not reply. I will stay on my line." So I think it was more that maybe frustrated European people who wanted him to be more to react more about what Lavrov was saying. And in the European Parliament, for example, close to 80 MEPs or more than 80 MEPs asked Borrell to resign. I mean, for me, the first time there is so many MEPs asking a high representative to resign after this kind of event. So for me, it was quite a big thing.
Indeed. Now, towards the end of our debate, I'd like to bring the US aspect to this, because this is also interesting. Now, with the new administration of Joe Biden, there are some talks in the press that they are also preparing a new sanction package. And unlike Trump, they want to coordinate, they want to show a goodwill. Coordination has happened before when, for instance, the sanction against the annexation of Crimea were coordinated, or the sanctions on the military actions, basically war in eastern Ukraine, and that those were also coordinated amongst Europe and the US and some of the others. But on the other hand, there is still the US sanctions against Nord Stream 2 that many European countries do not like. And I guess the question is to all of you is whether the level of cooperation is possible, or is it possible to return to the pre-Trump level of cooperation, so to say? Camille, perhaps you want to start.
I think yes, but I think on Ukraine, they were always quite united, even on the Trump administration. I think on the Crimea and on the Eastern Ukraine, they always tried to discuss, to take the same kind of sanctions at least, or to sanction the same people. So I think they can continue like that. The Biden administration is quite new, so I know there are some members of Congress who already asked for sanctions. I know it's ongoing in the US. So I think the Biden administration maybe will be more careful about what's happening also inside Russia. So I think with EU, it will be possible to cooperate quite a lot.
Rikard, what's your take?
I think it's important that there is cooperation. It wasn't too much about that in the last 4 years, and it's a positive sign. I think it's a good thing, but in the same time, I think these are the easy low-hanging fruits, agreeing on some people's names right now. Of course, Nord Stream is a big ghost there in the room. It's an elephant. Of course, the Americans are not happy about it at all. So that might be a certain thing. But I think actually what I fear a bit is that Russia might want to test this new transatlantic marriage in a sense. I mean, this summer, I'm pretty sure that, I mean, I think that Russia might do a new offensive in eastern Ukraine, for example, or might do more offensive stuff in Belarus as well. And the reason I think that is that soon both Germany and France will go into their respective election cycles. So they will be focused elsewhere, as if they weren't focused on other things like COVID right now. So then it will be really interesting to see how this transatlantic bond really holds up.
That will be interesting indeed. Claudia, elections are coming. Do you really feel the election mode in Germany now? And is the cooperation with the EU coming up, with the US, EU-US cooperation coming up as a subject?
Well, there is the wish for cooperation, and everybody was happy here after Biden was announced president elected and everything was fine. But on the other hand, as long as Angela Merkel is our reigning queen, the Nord Stream thing is non-negotiable. And her reign will end in September this year. And until then, she is putting a last little diamond in her crown by somehow dealing perfectly, or not perfectly, but as good as possible with the COVID-19 pandemic situation and the crisis. And all the transatlantic relationship, all the negotiations about Nord Stream, yes or no, and how to deal together with Russia, that will come after September, I would say. Until then, I'm pretty sure there will be no new wheels invented when it comes to that. Definitely not.
Indeed. So let's see what will be happening with the elections, in particular in Germany, but then also in other countries. There's some election cycles already now in March that are coming. The Dutch elections will be interesting to watch, in particular in Bulgaria as well. But for now, this is all we've got time for. Thanks a lot for participating. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.